Hey everyone, welcome to our tutorial on nested if statements in C#. Let's jump into the code. As you can see, I have Visual Studio pulled up here, and I have the code from our previous video where we created an ATM, and we had 3 bank accounts. I got rid of the third bank account just to make the code a little bit more simple and easy to read. But for this tutorial, what I'd like to do is add a little bit of functionality to this. And I'd like to add the ability for Pete to withdraw money from his bank account. So let's go down to our first if statement, and we'll go into this scope. Right? This is the scope. And so we've covered what scope was on the previous tutorial. So in our scope, let's give the option to the user to withdraw money. So we'll go console WriteLine. And in here I'll put how much would you like to withdraw? And so now, similar to how we did before, we have to take our input and put it into a variable. So let's create a variable called, we'll give it the type of a double, and we'll call it withdraw amount. And we're going to set it equal to a console.readLine, which will be the user's input. Now you can see we're getting an error here with that red squiggly because console readLine returns a string, and this is this variable type is a double, and you know that the assignment operator needs the same type on each side. So to fix this, what we'll do is I will create a method. We've seen something similar before with an integer, but I'm going to put this little bit of code in here. And so we'll get into classes and methods and things like that later. All you need to know now is that this line will take in a string from the user, but then change it into a double so that it can go in this variable. Now we're going to have issues if we put in things like letters or special characters, but we're going to kind of avoid those use cases for now because that's not really what this example is about. So right now we're going to take in our double and we're going to put it in here. And so that double is going to be the amount that the user wants to withdraw. So now what I'd like to do here is I'd like to now check to see if the withdraw amount is more than the amount that's in my bank account. So if my balance is greater than the withdrawal amount or equal to it, then I can withdraw that money. So what I'll do is I'll say if, I'm going to use an if statement now, and you'll notice that this if statement is in the scope for this if statement. And so that's just known as nesting if statements. It's pretty common, and there's no special syntax or any special wording that you need to do to create this. You can just type out your normal if statement. And so whenever you pass anything inside of parentheses like this, the expression or the variable that you pass in between here is called an argument, sometimes called a parameter, depending on what context you're in. So for the argument into this if statement, I'm going to pass in an expression, and that expression is going to be a Boolean expression, because remember, if statements need a true or false value. So I'm going to say if our withdraw amount is less than or equal to our first balance, then we're going to do what's inside of this if statement. If this is not true, then we'll do something else. So I'll create an else. We'll do something else down here if this is not true. If this is true, what I'll do is I will take our balance and we're going to set it equal to our balance minus the withdrawal amount. And so when you subtract doubles in this way, the double class can kind of do some kind of questionable things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a math round. And so what we're going to do is so that the double class doesn't return a bunch of decimal places, because a double type can go down to a very small fraction. So if you did a subtraction like this, you would get a lot of places after the decimal. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to limit that to 2 here, and I'm rounding it here to 2. And we'll get into methods and classes and all that stuff later. But right now, just know that this line basically takes our balance, subtracts the withdrawal amount, and rounds that so that we only see 2 decimal places. So, and that'll store that result in our first balance variable. So this line makes it so that our balance is equal to our withdrawal amount minus our balance. And if we have less money in our account than we're trying to withdraw, so if we're trying to withdraw more money, then I'm going to just tell the user you can't do that. You can't do that. Okay, so let's run this code. Okay, so I'm going to enter in my username as Pete. And now I see it. How much would you like to withdraw? So let's go back and scroll up in our code. We see that I have $24.80. So what I'd like to do is I would like to withdraw $23.10. So when I hit this, it should allow us to withdraw that amount, and then it should print out how much we have left in our account. Because you see here, we still have this right line for our balance. So at the end, we're still going to print out our balance because it's still within the scope of this if statement. So let's hit return, and we see that it's $1.70 left in our bank account. So that's correct. So the code worked. So now let's close this window and let's run the code again. And now let's try to withdraw some more money than is in our account. So I'm going to put in P. How much would you like to withdraw? We have $24.80 here. So let's withdraw $25. Hit enter. And it says you can't do that. And then we print out our balance, which is $24.80. So you guys can see here how nesting if statements works, right? Nesting an if statement is only when you put an if statement inside the scope of another if statement. And remember, to create an if statement, you just write the words if, create the parenthesis, and then inside of these parentheses, you put in an expression that has a true or false result, so a Boolean expression. Thanks.